I make the long journey up on top of the Steens Mountains. I see an early American cave shelter here on top the mountain, and over across from me I see where there was some mining activity went on over here. There's the mine right there. It was for recovering mercury from the stone here. And here's some of the equipment they recovered it with. They would heat this mercury and it evaporates from the stone. The stone is called cinnabar, and it'll evaporate the mercury. And here's the mine. This is the first year I've seen this grate and culvert in there. It has a place where you can lock it, although it wasn't locked at this time. The BLM has put this on most of the old mines up here. I leave the mine and head down the trail. A ways down there, I find a second mine out where you can overlook the playa of the Alvert Desert. I climb down a very steep bank where there's a bunch of old boards and stuff here. And there it is, that neat little old mine right down below. So I'll sneak down there and take a look inside and see what's in it. These miners like to dig holes, and this mine is one that sunk straight down again. There's a rickety old ladder in it with even one rung broke. I got around where I could look in it fairly well, and I didn't see a darn thing down in there other than that ladder. They had even had a little structure on the outside of it there, maybe for storing tools and different things. Everything's homemade. Their pulleys here are old car wheels that they've improvised here to run their cables over. I go on down the hill from the mine, and here's the old house that they lived in down here. It's in sort of bad repair here. Every year I go there, I'm expecting to see it no longer standing, but it's standing, and there's also a magpie nest right out in front of it. The magpies always build a covered nest like this, and then they go in and out that little hole there, and this nest was active. The magpies were doing a lot of fussing and grumbling around about me being there, but I didn't spend long, and I didn't get close to bother them.
In their covered nest, and there must be eggs or babies in there, because the old mama magpie sure making a ruckus around here. The old cabin's pretty well had it. The front's pretty well gone on it. And their stove is setting outside. There's an old swallow nest from last year that's fallen down here. And they've sure got a big picture window here now, since the whole ends fell out of it. The couch looks to me like it's pretty well worn out. There's a barn swallow nest, and it must be active now too, because the barn swallows are sure swooping around. Whoever built this cabin here must have enjoyed the view out there. And there's even a little meadow out front here where probably a lot of wild.
The buckwheat family is very well represented here, and there's a little Great Basin gopher snake crawling across the road. I make an attempt to get him out of the road before someone runs over him, and he doesn't seem to appreciate my efforts much at all. These gopher snakes are quite numerous out here. Some call them the bull snake in this area, and they're non-venomous. They're a constrictor, so they grab a hold of something and squeeze it to death instead of using venom on it. The only thing, if one were to bite you, he can leave some of those little teeth that he uses to hold a rodent or something. He could leave them in you, and you have to take a pair of tweezers and pull them out. Maybe it's better just to go ahead and not get bit by one. The snakes are just now coming out of hibernation, and when a snake's eating a rodent or something, you can see a lump on their belly. But I saw no lumps on them, so maybe they haven't got around to eating yet. Usually the gopher snake comes out before the rattlesnakes do, but I've heard 2 or 3 people had seen rattlesnakes here, although we seen none this trip. They can look very intimidating, and they do a lot of hissing. I guess that's a way of saying, back off, you've came close enough. They can actually coil, and they do a lot of striking too. While I'm here, I wanted to go out and check on the herd of wild horses over on the east side of the playa of the Alvert Desert. There's always a herd over there, and this year I see something different. I see a total white horse there that I've never seen before, and this herd is known as the sheep's head herd of horses. While I'm standing here filming those few horses, I hear the thunder of hooves, and up out of the draw right below me come a whole herd of these magnificent wild horses going up there as fast as they can go, running through the sagebrush. And a cloud of dust and the rumble of hooves on the desert floor, they disappear into a sea of sagebrush almost as quick as they appeared. One should avoid chasing these horses, and in a motor vehicle you should always stay to the existing roads and trails. Otherwise you'll be tearing up the desert and running these animals too much. When there gets to be too many of them, the BLM come out here and capture a few, and you can adopt these horses at a few different adoption places around Oregon. There's one at Burns and another over around Ontario or Vail or someplace where this sheep's head herd probably is adopted out. By now, I'm out in the desert a considerable distance, but I can look back and see the Steens Mountains guiding me back almost as if it were a lighthouse. Any place where you're around where there's a herd of wild horses, you'll see these stallion piles. This is where the stallion manure is, and they always go in the same spot each day, or about the same spot each day, depending on where they are. And that way, they leave their scent so other stallions know whose territory they're in. A tiny cloud is hanging over the summit of the Steens Mountains, and that reminds me it's about time. I better be heading back where we're camped. An excellent way to start the day out is to get in the hot springs and watch the sunrise over the playa of the Alvert Desert. Usually there's no one here at that time of day, so it gives you some time to reflect and plan the day as to what you're going to do. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do today. Do I want to go fishing, or do I want to take pictures, or do I want to go for a hike? There's some difficult decisions that have to be made out here. The going fishing thing seems to have won out, so we're heading toward Man Lake. There's usually always an antelope or two around. Along Man Lake Ranch here, they have some alfalfa that those antelopes seem to think is pretty darn good eating. A little welcoming committee of red-headed blackbirds set perched on a rail here right as you go in Man Lake for all who look to see. Some little sandpipers are hurrying around here gouging in the mud at water's edge to see if they can find their next meal. Even the tiny little flowers are blooming along lake's edge here. This is the little beadhead fly that seems to work quite well here. Here's what we're using. And then we wade out a little way, not too far because the bigger fish are in closer. And we cast out and then we do a retrieve like this. Little jerks. And I keep the pole tip kind of low and then do this little jerk retrieve like this. A little pause between and then a little jerk and a little pause and a little jerk. As we leave Man Lake and head south, two big buck antelope appear out of nowhere, and in true antelope style, they have to race us and run across the road in front of us. We're trying to get rid of them. We slow up and we're staying way behind them, because just as sure as you can bet on it, they're going to race across the road right in front of you when you get up close to them. And that's the way a lot of antelope get run over. So maybe if we stop, they'll go ahead and crawl through the fence or run on their way. But when we stop, they just seem to stop. We haven't gone very far, but it seems like they're a little bit played out. Maybe they've been running down here ahead of someone else. But there's some open range ahead of us with no fence. If they can just make it up there, then they can run out across the sagebrush in true antelope style. These critters just won't jump a fence very often. I have seen them do it, but not too often, although they definitely have the ability to do it. They can jump a sagebrush and clear it by feet, but they just won't go over a fence. They like to crawl through it. It appears like they're going to make it. Maybe they'll be more careful about getting caught in the road. After the antelope, we take the little road off to the left as we're heading south. This'll wind out through the sagebrush for several miles out near Mickey Butte, and we'll come eventually to Mickey Hot Springs. And Mickey Hot Springs is a little Yellowstone. The Alvert Desert is out beyond us here. A few dust devils are starting to blow out there as we head on out toward Mickey Hot Springs. We've only eaten a little bit of dust as we pull in to Mickey Hot Springs. The Bureau of Land Management has put a fence around here to keep cattle and horses out of the hot springs. There's a big pool that's really hot that would kill a cow if she fell in. We park the vehicle, get out, and we're ready to check the hot springs out. Through the little gate and on as we go. Comes Marge through as we head on out to check out the geothermal. First we come to the great, big, very deep, clear water pool that's the first one you come to, and this is extremely hot. There have been people and dogs and other animals fall in here, and they've become cooked before they could get out. I mean, it killed them. This little pool looks like we was built up here by the minerals evaporating from the water. It soon builds a mound. Here we see numerous bubbling mud pots, but it's been so dry there's no mud to bubble up, so there's just steam being vented. This one has a little muddy water in it, and this was one time a bubbling mud pot, but due to the drought there's not as much water, so it's pretty well dried up, but the steam's still escaping here and hissing. This mud pot down here is still bubbling, but not real thick mud. And then the pool here is hissing and bubbling. Sort of a deep, super hot pool with algae growing on it. Here's a bubbling mud pot. The pool here has a lot of volcanic gases escaping and coming gurgling to the surface of that super hot water. And there's more. One of them's erupting a little bit here. The guys are spitting out some super hot gas here and steam. It wouldn't have taken long here because this one's hot. Yeah. And I'm going to try that little pool that the stream from the main springs flows out there. And I'm going to try it and see how it's going to be for heat. Okay, I'll test the water. It may be the fountain of youth. Since it's a very cool day, this pool has cooled enough that I'll be able to use it for a while. And it does feel quite good. It had cooled, someone had ditched it off and built this little pool. Oh, that feels nice. Okay.
No, it has to be more. It's not only I'm losing 5. Yeah. I'm losing 10.
Well, it might be 8 or 10.
That makes them away 10.
Is it pretty hot?
Not bad. It's okay. If that's the fountain of youth and I go back to hot springs 20 years old again, then what's Marge gonna say? Sat in the shade and some out in the sun and have our lunch. While we're eating lunch, we look over on a bush and here's a little burrowing owl there looking at us. He must have a burrow and a nest nearby. We won't bother him, we'll just watch him a little bit. He hops up on a rock here. He's not leaving, so he must have a nest there. A big old Chinese rooster pheasant struts across the road in front of us as we leave. I don't know what these guys eat here, but apparently there's something they like. A little creek, and it comes out of the hill right up here under the road and runs down this little creek, and then these pipes are in here to carry it to the hot springs, and
That one pipe you just lower it to let the hot water in, and the others, there are little plugs on it, and you just pull these plugs out and the hot water comes in. But when you let too much hot water in, it gets too hot to use, so we've got them plugged off right now. And then there's a drain plug in each of the pools right down in the bottom, and someone's been monkeying with that plug and the pool is leaking. So if you let it fill up, then the water is too hot, and if you shut it off, all the water runs out. But this pool over here, it's fine. And the old shed around here has many bullet holes in it. The tin on it and the shed is falling down. Last time we were here, there was way more of it than there is now. The tin scattered everywhere. I guess the wind blew it off. And here's some tin laying out here from it, and it had numerous graffiti and things on the walls, and there's even a little dressing room here.
It's nearly as light as day, with almost a full moon out tonight, as we check out the hot springs for a little while longer.